Hello and welcome to Pause with Nandini on NRI Affairs. Today I have an extremely special guest, and it's our great honor to welcome Mr. Avijit Sarkar to our show. And he is a musician, a composer, an illustrator, a cartoonist, a writer, a poet, a puppeteer, a philanthropist, a mathematician, and a polymath from Sydney, Australia. Just talking about all the things he does is quite exhausting. So I'm looking forward to figuring out how he manages to do all of this. He was awarded the Australia Day Award 2020 by the City of Parramatta, Australia, for his contributions to art and culture. In 2021, he was featured in a book titled Success Stories of Indo Australians, a collection of 50 inspirational life stories. He's also been endorsed by the Australian Performing Rights Association as a music composer. We'll hear about his journey as a music composer as well. Although I have to say, I was introduced to him through his writing and his cartooning. So we're not going to let him get away without giving us a brief glimpse into all the wonderful things he does. He's written 2 books, and other literary works have been published in many international anthologies. His designs, illustrations, and cartoons have appeared in numerous magazines and books across the world. He recently published his collection of cartoons, The Coronavirus Files, as a Kindle book. And we'll also put the link in the interviews. So I'm sure many of our viewers and readers would like to look at that. In 2020, he was awarded the Golden Bars Award by TSL, which is the Significant League, an international group of authors, poets, academics, publishers, and critics for excellence in satire and humor. In 2021, he completes 45 years on stage as an entertainer and musician. He has appeared in over 1,800 concerts and has a huge variety of musical styles. He's the director of Natraj Academy in Sydney that he established 13 years ago to train and encourage new musical talents in our communities. Today, all proceeds from his creative pursuits are donated to medical research and charity in Australia. In a career spanning over 4 decades, Avijit has left his footprint in every form of creativity in Australia. Wow, that is such a robust and life lived, as a celebration to the creative arts. I wanted to ask you. You seem to have lived many lifetimes within one and reinvented yourself. Your whole life seems to be like you've played through many different instruments. So I would love for you to take us through what were some of the more memorable phases in your life.
Well, memorable phases, if you're talking about, let's say, music, then the memorable would be the one where I first time stepped onto the stage. That's memorable. That's going back in 75 or 76, now many years ago. So that stays with you forever, I think. When you first time walk onto the audience, that you always remember that. Yeah.
Where was that?
That was in the city of Ahmedabad in the state of Gujarat in India.
I also read that you were touring with a rock band at that
Yes,
time.
for many years I actually became part of, my interest shifted suddenly. I was trained in Indian classical music, pure music, but suddenly my interest changed, and I thought I should move over to larger horizons, and I got into a rock band as a drum. I used to drum before, but I got into a band and started my drumming journey. So I worked with a rock band as a drummer for some time.
Amazing. But what was your family home experience like growing up as a child? Were you exposed to literature and music and art quite early?
Yes, yes. My both my parents were musicians. You see,
Mhm.
so my mother was a classical vocalist. My father he played the percussion. He played good tabla. So essentially, I was born into it. I grew up listening to them practicing, And I was able to then learn both the rhythm from my father. I learned tabla and vocal from my mother. So both of them initiated me into music. So it was good for me that way. Yeah,
And you grew up in Ahmedabad, was it?
I
Was
did.
that
I
where?
did. Yes. Yeah.
All right. That sounds very interesting because I think some of those early impressions shape us in ways that we can't fathom as children. You
Indeed.
know, they say if you want to create a reader, just keep books in the house and let them watch you reading. So I
Absolutely.
think we imbibe a lot by just natural osmosis
Yeah,
from
it
our.
does help. It does help. Yes.
But the thing is, though, that apart from your whole creative side, you're a mathematician
Hmm.
and very much a man of science. So I'm always curious to know people who kind of can hold both within them. What do you see the relationship between the sciences and the arts? And can the humanities really humanize people?
You can. I mean, there is. Well, as far as mathematics is concerned, I believe that there is this the whole theory of order, and that helps. And there have been many musicians who have been mathematicians, and the other way around. Some very well-known mathematicians have played
Yeah.
music as a hobby, so it does help in analyzing and rationalizing music or any art. If you've got a science background, that's what I think it is. So you think rationally than just floating away into nothingness, you know.
But you know, a lot of the people from pure science backgrounds,
Hmm.
we find that when they come up to leadership positions or, you know, or positions of power, sometimes the decisions that they make may not, maybe rational, but are not humane. And,
Hmm.
and they sometimes lack a social and an empathetic awareness. And that's where perhaps, you know, and we've had a lot of discussions around this about introducing the humanities in meaningful ways to people who naturally have a scientific, rational bent of mind.
Sure. I mean, one of the downsides is that when you start thinking too much in terms of science, that rationality then I think clouds over your humanity, the human side of it. Sometimes it does. So I guess you got to be careful. A lot of scientists, not that they don't have a humanist side, but they tend to get bogged down with logic and algorithmic attitude to life. So that sometimes is not good, and you lose touch with the essential, the core values of humanity. Unfortunately.
That, yes, and I think though in you and your interests, I think you're a beautiful blend of all of these different worlds. And I want to ask you, I know tastes change over time, but are there any, or who are your sort of musical influences, the people who still move you, who still touch your heart? Who are the
Uh,
ones closest to you?
in terms of music, I have grown up listening and learning classical music. Many pure classical musicians have influenced me, and I do listen to a lot of that stuff every day. In terms of lighter varieties of music, I have been influenced by, and because I have played with Ustad Ghulam Ali, I've played harmonium with him in his concerts in Australia. So his way of singing and his human side, by the way, has definitely influenced me. I've also been in touch with many other people I've played with, or been in touch with people like Jagjit Singh, and I've done a workshop with Manna Day when he was in Sydney. So I've been in very close touch with these people. So, and when you are and you realize that there is much more to these people than just music, much more. And so there have been quite a few influences. A lot of Jagjit Singh's music and his poetry has influenced my style of compositions and singing both.
That's lovely. And how about from your cartooning and your writing
Mhm.
space? Are your influences more say from India, or is it more international? I know you said you read a lot when you were younger and you had many different
Uh,
influences.
yes, cartooning. Yes, I've been influenced, severely influenced actually by. There used to be a cartoonist in India by the name of Mario Miranda, and so at a very early age, I started studying his cartoons, and I got influenced by the way he looked at society and the characters that he could perceive that we usually don't. So I taught myself to perceive characters in a crowd just the way that he used to do. And his was the biggest influence in terms of cartooning and even illustrations. His style is still work. You can see his style in my works, Mary Miranda. So
Oh, I
definitely,
see.
as far
I
as
think,
literature is concerned, it was absolutely a self-taught thing. I used to read a lot. So since my childhood days, I got this fascination. By the way, it's interesting till the year 7 kind of background that I come from. I could not construct a single statement or a sentence in English while I was in year 7. Never. I couldn't even put together words to make a sentence. I was that poor in English. Never had. But then a neighbor introduced me to the children's author Enid Blyton when I was in a bit late in life, when I was in year 7. And somehow I started, that got me off to reading a lot. By the time I was in year 12, I was reading Shakespeare. So it was the amount of reading I've done in just 4 years was just unbelievable. I read everything, every kind of literature. So that, and I always thought I should one day try and write something from a very young age.
you know, I miss those years of just that passionate reading when, you're reading while you're eating, you're reading when you're walking
Yeah.
from room to room, you're banging into things,
Mm-hmm.
hiding in bed and you're reading. Those days, there's a magic in that kind of, and those impressions, the things you read then somehow just stay with you for life.
Absolutely, and then that the feel of holding a book and reading it instead of reading online, that very feel, is unbeatable, really.
Very different. So, may I ask you? I mean, we are all trying to make sense of the world in different ways,
Mm-hmm.
some through faith, some through religion, some through science.
Mm-hmm.
You are a declared atheist,
Mm-hmm.
and I find it interesting because you have possibly come to that position with a lot of thought and with a lot of introspection, looking within, looking without. How do you think being an atheist sort of informs your way of looking at human life and existence?
Um, I, I did study some of the old scriptures, and I did go through the Gita and the Bible and Quran in detail. I read all the English versions of Quran, and nothing really made sense to me in terms of humanity. It talks. These books talk about faith and belief, but it really did. None of them really talk about um, faith, belief aside, what you should do for other human beings. That's one thing I found that none of them say. They say all these strange things which common people find it very hard to decipher, and they decipher that wrongly sometimes, unfortunately. And the first thing I decided that I have to step out or step back from any kind of faith, because it was leading me not to the right places where I wanted to be. The moment I did that, I found independence of thought and speech both. I was a free man once I gave up, and I started thinking more rationally about human beings and away from religion and faith. And the moment I stepped away from, I was born a Hindu, and the moment I stepped away from my religion and any other, I found that I could embrace other people much more closely than when I was a believer.
That's interesting because it's almost like the walls that a particular faith creates, all those walls came crashing down. And then it was just people, and you were able to see humanity just as it is.
Mm-hmm.
And now things are so polarized in this world, right? You're
Yes.
with us, you're against us, you're for something, you're against something. And I think the most beautiful thing that we can leave as a legacy is the power of choice for
Mm-hmm.
people. And I think maybe there isn't that much discussion around atheism among young people.
Yeah.
And I think it's something to think about, because ultimately every child comes with certain indoctrination from their homes,
Mm-hmm.
and to be able to teach them to think on their own, whatever they may decide, I think that's a gift to be able to give them. And I'm glad to
Sure.
see that you found that path on your own.
Yes, yes, I did. I mean, I always questioned about the true values of that religious. It does make you disciplined, of course, religious, because it teaches you. It actually tells you, most religions, if you don't do this, you'll be punished by whoever. And so that's one of the so people. So the byproduct of that is that you learn discipline in life, because and most of that is out of fear of the
Mm.
unknown. And I've written at one place in one of the essays that fear of God and fear of society are the two biggest impediments and hurdles in progress. Once you step back from that, you'll find you think more, you're more, you embrace people more without thinking. And I always thought when I was young, very young, that my parents used to say you're a Hindu, and there used to be traditional. We have the pujas and everything at home, and I used to think, but why didn't somebody give me an opportunity or ask me if I want to be a Muslim or a Christian? I said throughout my nobody asked me. And I was wondering why that is so. Like your parents always teach you, or society tells you, do you want to be a medical professional, an accountant, a journalist, or whatever? You're given options, but not in this case. And I always thought, why not? Why have I not got that option in life? I should have been given that option, I think.
See, this is the kind of thinking that we come very rarely across, no? Because most people um, just follow and toe the line.
Mm,
And also, you see this non questioning attitude today. Look at the state of the world
mm.
and the
Oh,
things that are allowed to happen, because people are scared to question. They're scared to make up their own minds.
mhm, mhm.
Things. So we need more of you. We need more of you, and we need more of you through all the different things that you do. I did want to ask you about the school that you set up
Yes,
for music, and if you can tell us a little bit about that. And I know that's in Sydney, right?
that's in Sydney. Yes.
Is it accessible through online classes, maybe to other regions of Australia? Is there any way in which other children can benefit from it?
I haven't started online classes yet. I did some classes when the pandemic set in. So during COVID, all my students, I used to have Zoom sessions for teaching music, but I haven't. I've toyed with the idea that I should start online classes. I haven't done it yet. But yeah, I started this institution about, I don't know, like 2006, about 16 years ago. I started this.
Natraj Academy.
Natraj Academy it is. And the idea was I don't claim too much knowledge in this world, but whatever I thought, knowledge, I always believe the knowledge is for distribution and should be shared and given to people. Whatever little you know should be given away to people. And that's the reason I started Natraj Academy. Fortunately, I got some good students who are ready to work hard. Some of them are now professional musicians in their own rights, which makes me very happy. It's still going on. I
And
still,
is
still
it only music, or is it also, would you introduce dance and other creative things through the academy?
what has happened is that we do teach instruments, tabla and keyboard and so on, but mostly it's vocal, and I teach vocals there. But what has happened is that many creatives in Sydney, they started off at Natraj Academy in my practice rooms, and then I gave them that practice room to start off. When they come here, it's very hard for them to start to find a place. So I always give them. There have been some theater people who have started there, some dancers who started there. Now they have got their own classes and own schools, and I'm really, really happy for them. But that's another thing I do is I give that space that I have to people who want to use it free, of course, and as long as they flourish and then they can expand and move on, I'm happy to do that, to give to people.
That's brilliant. And I just think everything about you sort of sort of demonstrates this expansiveness that you have, because you don't restrict yourself to one creative pursuit. You
Mhm.
don't restrict yourself in your generosity and your ability to share. And I think that's something we can all kind of learn from. One of the things that I wanted to ask you is, you've been in Australia now many years,
Mhm.
right? And of course, you have very strong impressions of India, and that's part of you as well.
Yeah.
And I think many of our listeners and viewers are NRIs themselves, and there's always this sort of it's a sweet pain, isn't it, of our memories of India, of adapting and embracing a new culture and
Mhm.
being part of it. How has your experience been as an NRI?
I've been fortunate that I've had some very, very good experiences in Australia. I mean, I'm not saying that there are good and bad people here and there, they're everywhere.
Of
But
course.
fortunately, I've had excellent experience the last 32 years in Australia. I do remember India, and you remember back home, especially when your parents are there. I find once your parents are not there, then that relationship with your home back home there, it dilutes a little bit. Yeah, that's what I feel. I do remember my good days there of learning music and studying and so on. But after 32 years in a new country, that sort of dissolves a little bit, I think, over a period of time.
It's interesting because, I mean, I think it's also stages of life. You know, at the moment, I have such a deep desire for India and I just want to go and live
Sure.
there. But perhaps, you know, these are different stages we go through. And as you settle into a new space, you make your home and you make your own.
But you're right about the stages. That now my daughter is here, and I've got grandkids. I've got three grandkids, and so that it's more concrete in Australia now for me
The
than back
roots,
in India. Yeah. So your roots are the new roots. You're
right.
established. Your family here now.
Tell me a little bit about your concerts. I
Hmm.
know you do a lot of concerts, and some are, you know, a homage or an ode to a musician whose work you admire. Some are standalone concerts. Tell us, I'm sure many people are already aware of what you do in your concerts, and you have a huge following. But for those who don't know, give us a glimpse of what that's about.
I do various kinds of music. So that's another thing I've now done is to restrict myself to one kind of music. Just because I learned pure classical, I don't stick to pure classical. So I've expanded my vision to different kinds. So I sing ghazals, devotional music, folk music, and so on. Film music, of course. So my concerts are mostly, so they are diverse. So I go and sing all kinds at different places, but mostly most of the concerts are film songs. So they are Bollywood-based songs, and I like old music, so I stick to that's what gives me pleasure. The thing that's has changed in the last 12 years now is that most of my concerts, I've whatever if there is any money raised in my concerts, I give it away to do cancer research, breast cancer research in Australia. So all the money, whatever it is given away to this, even through my books or whatever money is raised. But concerts have been very useful for in that sense for me. Not only the music, the satisfaction, but the ability to then raise the funds and give it away. Breast cancer research in Australia, which is very, very close to my heart, which gives me greater pleasure, even greater than music itself, to be honest.
It's beautiful. I mean, it's actually it's a gift to be able to give, isn't it?
You have to give. If you think society has given to you, there are there was a time in my life where I was struggling for food, a decent meal back in India, and now it's different. So if you, and I say this to everyone, if you think that society has given you anything, something, then there comes a stage in life when you must decide that you need to give back even a little bit to society. You have to do this for the sake of others. You must. There are many people there out there who need that money or that affection or love or your care. You have to give to society whatever you can. You must.
You know, I absolutely agree, and I feel a bit encouraged to see that that consciousness is really developed and developing among people. Maybe it's, it's like Maslow's hierarchy, where people reach a place where they are fine and they actually have their basic needs met. Uh, I do find that, we do some fundraisers and all of that through different groups. People do come forward. People do come
Oh
forward.
yes, yes. I've
And
got very generous friends, I must say, who are there in every single concert. Moment I say that I'm doing this concert for this cause or whatever, they'll all stand up for me, all. So that awareness is really, really heartening, really, really
yes,
nice nowadays.
absolutely. And maybe there's something to be said for us doing some concert or musical thing together as NRI Affairs and what you do.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah, why not?
we can plan, because there's so many causes that need support, not just in India, but even here. And
Absolutely.
to be able to raise funds from within our community, and and it's a gift and a blessing. So maybe we'll take that offline and we'll have a discussion about
We should. And
that.
for me, it was the whole thing was a trigger for me, and it happens, I'm sure, to other people. That 12 years ago, my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer, and your life changes like that overnight. But it also set me thinking that other than she was like she's fine now, but and set me thinking that there must be so many people out there who are going through the same thing. And then I looked at the research being done, and I thought that that's one area that needs money. So sometimes what I mean is that sometimes there is a trigger in your life that sets it off. Till then you know about it, but you don't want to do anything about it. But there's one thing, especially if it happens to you, and you suddenly your eyes pop open and you think, nah, something must be done about this, or you need to do something about it.
That's brilliant, because it's like turning adversity into something positive that you can actually contribute to. I know your daughter's very accomplished, and I keep reading about the things she's doing in her space, and we'll have her on our show as well. But I want to
Sure.
talk to you a little bit about being a father and being a parent. I think ladies and women are always asked about their motherhood journey. But I want to ask you about your fatherhood journey and how that changed you, what that means to you.
You see, like when you change countries or you migrate to another country, life is not easy,
Yes.
and it was the same for us because I was fortunate because I got into software consulting very very quickly in Australia. My wife's case was just she's a medical practitioner, and her qualifications were not recognized, so she had to go through these studies and very hard studies, which she did. At that time, my daughter was just growing up, and she was 3 years old, and so our experience is a little bit different from possibly from many people, and maybe similar to some. So while my wife was studying and trying to pass her exams, I had to look out for my daughter. Most of the time, I was the company. So my experience was therefore definitely a little bit different from many males, and which is good because you get to know not only your child, but you get to know the world better when that happens to you. The other thing is that we never ever forced her to follow a certain profession. My wife never forced her to get into medicine. I never asked her to do computing sciences. And I just let her be and let her do what she wanted to do. But we always insisted that she get a good education. That's very important. It doesn't matter what it is. A good educational background, a qualification is a must. Whatever you do, it doesn't matter. So yes, and she picked her own life then after that. And it was okay because when your daughter comes home and says, she was working with a very good company and one of the top 5 companies in the finance sector, and one day she came and said that she is not cut out to work for others. She's going to leave everything and go into business, and that scares you a bit. But we didn't say anything. We allowed her to do what she did, and she did well, I guess. No.
That's brilliant. And I can't wait to have a conversation with her. Maybe I'll ask her about her experiences as being
Yeah,
a child of such an accomplished father and mother.
yeah. She would have some stories to tell you like that.
Yes, we'll get the real facts from
Yep,
her.
yep.
And So tell me, in terms of what's next, there's always something brewing with you. You're writing, you're creating. What can we
I,
look forward to?
yeah, I've been working a lot. I've been writing plays now, so I'm getting into theater now. So hopefully next year, around February, will be an evening of my plays. So I'm writing short plays. I've loved the shorter version of things. I've always loved writing short stories. And the same thing I'm doing for my plays. So I'm writing these plays. Each one of them would be around 15, 20 minutes. So I want to stage 5 of them in one evening for the audience. Five plays, all different. And some of these plays, the content may not go down well with the audiences. Whenever you say the truth, whether you're painting or you're writing, sometimes it does not go down too well with audiences. But you have to, as a critic, you have to do what you have to do. So I've written these plays. Some of them might be a little disturbing to people, but hopefully, so that's the next project that I'm doing, and I'm trying to get back. The other project I'm thinking of doing is to bring together. I did a lot of puppetry when I was in my younger days, and I traveled to a few countries doing that. And I was thinking that next year I should start working on sort of a production where half of the characters are human and half of them are puppets, large puppets. And I'm thinking I'll get there slowly, but I'm working on that idea, how to do that.
I absolutely am intrigued by this idea of puppetry and theater coming together.
Mm.
And I did read that you had actually gone to Tehran with your
Yeah.
puppetry.
Yeah, I learned puppetry under a world-renowned puppeteer by the name of Meher Contractor. And she took us, first time I went was in France and performed there at the International Festival of Puppetry. This is going back in, the early 80s, I think. And then we were invited and she took us to Tehran. I went there twice to perform. And it was a great experience, a lovely country, I must say, and great people. But there are restrictions to what you can and cannot do on stage. So we had to change our scripts based on their rules and regulations at the very last moment. But then that's what you do. You respect that country's laws and rules and do whatever you have to do. So we had to change. It was a musical we had taken. We had to change a few songs and certain way the characters behave because it's not part of their society and they wouldn't allow it. But that's all right. So we went and changed it and did whatever I had to do. We took shadow theater there, so shadow puppets, very large shadow puppets. That's what we did in Tehran.
And you were saying the shadow puppets, I think I read it somewhere. It comes from India,
Yes.
is it from Andhra Pradesh or?
Yes, Andhra Pradesh, that's an ancient art in Andhra Pradesh. It also was, shadow puppets were also there in China, in other Asian countries. It's many, many years now. But Andhra puppets are big, so they are full human size, each puppet. And they are made of leather, and the audience can actually see the colors from the other side as the light shines through. So we learned Andhra puppets, and so I was taught at the school of you might have heard of Mrinalini Sarabhai and Mallika Sarabhai. They ran an institute called Darpana Academy in Ahmedabad. So that's where I was trained in Andhra puppets.
What an exciting life. From puppetry in Tehran to touring in a rock band to now creating a fusion theater experience and singing so many songs. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing so much of your life and your times. And as we get closer to next year and your play starts coming together, we would love to have you back again to talk about that.
Definitely.
I'm sure it's going to be a massive success. And hopefully I can come down to see it in person and enjoy that experience. So
thank you.
very much.
I need to thank you, Nandini, for having me on the show. And it's really, really nice of you. Thank you very much. And we'll catch up on and offline. Yes, both.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.